Madam Secretary, I wanted to go back and revisit the topic we discussed earlier of border security, which is proponents of this legislation argue that it provides for real metrics for border security and triggers that are meaningful. And I will confess the testimony that was provided this morning is not encouraging in that regard. We talked about operational control, a measure DHS had used for some time. In 2010, the last time DHS used that measure of operational control, the conclusion was that only 873 of the roughly 2,000 miles of the southern border were under operational control. Now, that metric was not an encouraging metric in terms of assessing what kind of job we're doing securing the border. And it strikes me as not coincidental that in the light of that less than encouraging statistic, the Department simply decided to stop relying upon that statistic. And instead, if I understood what you explained this morning correctly, the Department now relies on a holistic group of measures, which to me seem reminiscent of Justice Lewis Powell's test in Bakke for affirmative action, that measured everything and has a great deal of subjectivity in it. If there are no objective metrics, if it is simply the subjective assessment of a host of factors, how can we have any confidence that the border will be secured and that any trigger will be meaningful?
Well, I think you have to step back, Senator, and look at where the border was even 6 or 7 years ago, where it is today. There are a whole host of statistics that help in that regard, not subjective in that sense. They're numbers that give you an overall picture of what's happening at the border. The problem with the operational control metric is the overuse of it or misuse of it, because it was easily misunderstood. And I'm not being critical about it being overused, I'm just being descriptive. What it really refers to is your ability to have situational awareness and response in highly trafficked areas, where you need it, where the risk is greatest. What this bill does is pretty much say, look, we're going to continue to build on the security you already have. There's additional money in there for that. We hope that we can get flexibility with respect to how that money is spent. That goes to the set-aside for fence. And by the way, if we're going to use effectiveness rate, which is a GAO number based on numbers we give the GAO, and if that doesn't reach a certain number in the highly trafficked areas, then we'll have a commission that will recommend to me what additional steps need to be made.
Madam Secretary, though, it seems to me that if border security is to be measured by an amorphous, multi-factored subjective test, that this committee knows to a metaphysical certainty that DHS will conclude border security is satisfied. And if a trigger is certain to occur, then I would suggest it is not a meaningful trigger that is measuring anything. Let me ask you this. Can you describe a circumstance in which the evidence would be such that DHS would say the trigger is not satisfied, that border security is not there? I mean, you've already told us apprehensions are at the lowest level in 40 years, and yet the border's secure. So what would the facts have to be for DHS to conclude the triggers are not satisfied?
Well, I think, Senator, we'll just kind of agree to disagree on the predicate for your question, but we would be continuing to look at all of the measures I indicated to you. We would be deploying the technology plans that we have submitted to the Congress. And those technology plans are sector-specific, and they're important. They're important because they will give us even greater visibility into what may be trying to come across the border than we even have now, so that when you look at effectiveness rate,
Madam Secretary, I'm sorry, my time is expiring, and I would like, if possible, for you to try to answer the question I asked, which is what the evidence would have to show for DHS to conclude that triggers were not satisfied.
Well, if the conditions in the Tucson sector return to where they were in 2005 and 2006, the trigger certainly would not be satisfied.
Thank you.